Hello everyone and welcome back to Fly From Home. It's been a few weeks since I last did a flight simulator video, and in that time a lot of things have happened because we've got a whole new flight simulator, and I'm going to hold off on expressing my views on Microsoft Flight Sim 2024 for now because it's worthy of a whole video in itself. I'm going to keep things nice and short this time, just like I did last time when we were looking at the flight dynamics of the PMDG 737 in the new update. And we've got a whole new 737 to play around with, so I thought it would be a really good idea to go out and do the exact same test on this that we did with the PMDG. And if you watch the PMDG video, you'll know that I was quite impressed with how good it is. It's pretty much spot on, probably the best 737 certainly I've flown in a simulator in terms of manual handling. There's a couple of things that are still yeah, but as I explained in that video, I think that's more to do with the limitations of FS2020's physics system. Now, FS24 has a whole new physics system which is supposed to be a lot more advanced, a lot cleverer, and should allow third-party developers to create probably the best flight models we're ever going to see in a home desktop simulator, theoretically. However, this is a default aircraft. This thing has been made by, I believe, Asobo. Maybe a little bit of help from Working Title, I'm not sure. But this is not a fancy third-party developer aircraft. This is a default aircraft. Now, it's pretty impressive for a default aircraft, but there are a lot of bugs, as there are with a lot of things in Microsoft Flight Simulator. So expect to see a lot of things happening on this flight that perhaps shouldn't really be happening, and I'll try to point them out as we go. But bear in mind, this isn't a test of systems. I'm not looking at the FMC or how the overhead behaves or how the master caution panel and all that kind of stuff, the caution warnings and all these kind of things are supposed to work. I am just looking at how it handles. So that's all we're going to be focusing on for now. I have made some tweaks with my controls. So I have a Honeycomb Alpha yoke, which I fly all of my big airliners from, unless it's an Airbus, in which case I've got a Warthog stick to use with those. And I have already made some little tweaks because I believe, as default, all of these default aeroplanes are a little bit too sensitive, and that's just the way that they're set up. They're set up to maybe be used with a smaller controller than a Honeycomb. So I've kind of tweaked things around a bit, made them less sensitive, which hopefully should improve the feel, the handling feel. Now, bear in mind, the PMDG is set up to be used with no tweaks, no curves on the controls or anything whatsoever. It's just set up to be used straight out the box, and that's how they've tweaked it. So the PMDG is a little bit different. So if you want a more realistic handling feel to your default max in 24, I would recommend putting some curves in there, and you're going to have to just play around as per your specific controller and make it, you know, feel realistic based on what you've got. I'm afraid I can't really help you out any more than that. I've gone for minus 0.25, I think, on my settings. So if you've got an alpha, that's what I think sort of works best. But I'm still messing around with it, and I might change my mind later on, so don't take that as gospel. Anyway, I'll shut up now and just talk about what flight we're going to do today. So, much sunnier climes than where we were last time. We were in East Midlands last time, but the weather's rubbish in East Midlands, and I wanted to use live weather to show you what a representative, some representative atmospheric conditions. So I've come down to the Canary Islands, which is a place I'm sort of reasonably familiar with. We're at Las Palmas on Gran Canaria. We're going to be taking off at runway 21 right, do the Tenerife North 3 Bravo departure, and we're flying over to Tenerife North, or rather infamous Tenerife North. Anyone who is familiar with aviation history will know all the awful history of that place. But it's a very interesting airport. It's got some interesting atmospheric conditions, and I'm fairly familiar with it. I've flown there quite a few times, so we are going to be testing this out and seeing how she goes, and I'm going to be doing as much manual handling as possible. So bear in mind, I operate this airplane as per my operator's standard operating procedures, which may be a little bit different to what you've seen before from people such as Flight Deck to Sim. and V1, who obviously, you know, operate different for different airlines on different aircraft and all this kind of stuff. I've never flown a MAX before. I've only flown the NG and the Classic. So the MAX is significantly different to the NG in terms of cockpit presentation. However, it's supposed to be almost identical in terms of flight characteristics. So I'm just going to be pretending it's an NG and comparing it directly to how the NG flies. So that's it, really. Let's assume we're clear for takeoff and let's go. So there we go. There we go. We're going to go auto throttle arm. That's checked. The transponder, again, this is one of the many bugs. Can't seem to get any codes into the transponder, which is awesome. And I'm going to take terrain on my side because there's a lot of terrain, and let the first officer have weather. So, start the lineup. Now, first things first, ground handling. All the airplanes in Microsoft Flight Simulator 24 handle on the ground extremely well compared to FS2020. It's very, very realistic, and I've got my Warthog stick set up to use as a tiller, so I'm actually steering with a tiller right now. And yeah, having not a great deal of experience taxiing the 737, because obviously the first officer doesn't get a tiller, or at least they don't at our airline, and I think that's the case at most airlines. But from what I feel, this is really, really good. The aeroplanes have some real inertia to them. There's a whole system out there to calculate grip levels and things like that from the tyres, and the nose wheel's very small on the 737, so you do get some sliding if you go into corners a bit too quickly. So very, very good in that sense. What isn't so good is the amount of power required to keep the thing rolling. We're not massively heavy. It's a Boeing business jet config, this aircraft, so there's almost no passengers on board, and we have about 10 tons of fuel, which isn't a huge load. So I would suspect about sort of 55-ton takeoff weight. I'd expect at that weight that the aircraft would just be rolling along on its own, of its own devices sort of thing, and it doesn't. So again, I'm sure someone like PMDG could fix that and get the ground handling absolutely perfect. So let's give it a go, shall we? So a bit of forward pressure. That we were on the wrong runway and the wind had swung around to the other end. So now we are on runway 3 right at Gran Canarias. Everything else is exactly the same. So slightly different SID on this one. It's just straight ahead and left turn. Slightly more simple, but other than that, we should be all good. I'll just make sure everything's still fine. For some reason that was off. Right, auto throttle's armed. Let's assume we're all clear to take off. All that's set. Transponder is, yeah, out reporting. I've got the train, the weather on that side, so we should be all good to go. So let's get rid of the parking brake, which does not make the correct noise at all, which is very disconcerting. As per Boeing recommendations, I'll give it a little bit of roll before we set power, and I'll get the yoke back so you can see what I'm doing on the controls. And set thrust. Thrust set. 80 knots. It's pretty nice. Handling quite nicely on the runway. V1 rotates. Try and maintain pressure as we rotate. Positive climb. Gears coming up. And flight director's commanding about 20 degrees. So I'll try not to go too crazy, but I'll follow it as best I can. That master caution is spurious, by the way. So set climb thrust and bug up speeds if I can. Still getting used to this new control methodology. Apparently it's a bit like X-Plane, but I've never played X-Plane. Well, not in any kind of depth, so I'm not really sure about that. Okay, speed check, flaps 1. Feeling pretty good so far. The flight director's a bit lively, I would say. It's moving a lot faster than the one in the real airplane does, or at least I assume it does if it's anything like the NG. You can see it's just like going crazy all over the place. Just going to maintain about 10 degrees nose up. The trim is a bit weird, not going to lie. Okay, speed check, flaps up. Let's get LNAV in. Completely forgot that. But it's a straight line from the runway, so shouldn't be too bad. The flaps, by the way, move way faster than they should do. It's flaps up, no lights. It's level change 220. And so we do the after takeoff flow at this point. There's no gear to turn off in this airplane, which is kind of cool. Order brake goes off. I guess there's no retractables, and then I guess those come off, and that's it. After takeoff checklist, so engine bleeds are on, packs are auto, flaps up, no lights, APU's off, after takeoff checklist complete. Okay, how's she feeling so far? Not too bad, actually. The trim's a bit weird. Oh, it made a noise then. Guess if you hold it down long enough, it will make a noise. Let's go altimeter to standard as well. Oh, it does both sides. Interesting. Okay. Yeah, it's okay with the. I mean, that's a bit of an aggressive turn. It's almost commanding an overbank there. It's the flight director is poor. I'm not gonna lie. It's way more lively than it really should be. It's commanding some very aggressive changes in roll and pitch, which are kind of making hand flying a little bit more difficult than it usually would be. And I'm not saying I'm the world's best hand flying pilot, but I'm usually a lot smoother than this. One to go. Hands on the thrust levers. Right. But yeah, it's all right. Is it as good as the PMDG? I wouldn't say so. It's a little bit too twitchy still, even with those adjustments on the control curves. It's not bad. You can see she's flying fairly stably now. So, not terrible. Certainly for a default airplane, it's doing a good job. But certainly not rivaling how the PMDG flies, which, like I said, is probably about the best MCP speed. About the best 737 I've ever flown in a simulator, to be honest. Right, so the thrust is coming down. You see the nose dropping? I'm having to add nose up trim now. Those turns are so aggressive on that flight director. I'm going to turn them off in a second and be free of their machinations, but try and follow it for now. I'm having to try really hard not to overbank the aeroplane as I try to follow it. So yeah, there's definitely a thrust pitch, but we'll check it properly in a second. Auto throttle's being a little wild. It's coming back on now, so I'm getting a bit of nose up pitch from that, and back off again. The auto throttle in the real aircraft is, it's all right. It's not perfect, but it certainly does a lot better job than what this is doing, that's for sure. Right, so let's try and get things settled down, and I'll click the auto throttle out and get rid of these stupid flight directors, and hopefully we'll be able to fly a little bit more sanely. Get it trimmed first. Using the flight path vector, which I usually do when I hand fly on the NG. A lot of people don't like it, but I quite like it. I think it's quite a nice little addition. By flight path vector, I mean the little the bird. It's sometimes referred to. It's a live representation of the aircraft's flight path through the sky. That's I guess that's sort of trimmed. It's very hard to trim this thing out, which is annoying. All right, let's get rid of the auto throttle. Been able to bind most of my controls on my Honeycomb Bravo to this. I've also got the Pro Desk Sim, I think it's called, 737 levers, with the auto throttle disconnect button and the toga button on. But I haven't been able to get my my speed brake lever working for some reason, so not really sure about that. If anyone's got any ideas, leave it in the comments. Right, okay, so let's go to these stupid flight directors. And first of all, we're going to look at the thrust pitch couple. So, if I shut the thrust levers now, what should happen? Let's make sure it's as in trim as I can get, because I'm going to let go of the yoke. Right, oh god, it's still not in trim. What should happen if I shut the thrust levers is the nose should drop fairly dramatically. I mean, it kind of varies between the variants on the 737 how aggressive the thrust pitch couple is. It's more aggressive, for example, on the Classic than it is on the NG. But I'm guessing the Max is broadly similar to the NG. So it should be reasonably instantaneous, reasonably very easy to notice that the thrust pitch has come off. So I'm going to shut the thrust levers now. Let's see what happens. Thrust is coming off. Yeah, you can see the nose is dipping. It's coming down reasonably quickly. So yeah, there definitely is a thrust pitch there. You can see it sort of settle down to about 5 degrees nose down. So yeah, definitely that's in effect. Let's do the opposite now and reset max continuous for the climb. Shut up master caution, and you can see, yeah, straight away the nose is coming back up again. See it pitching up, not touching the yoke at all now. So yeah, the thrust pitch is definitely there, and I'd say it's probably about right as well, which is nice. Come back to about sort of 60%, which should keep us at about 220 knots. So quite happy with that. That's good. That's nicely modelled. Now, something that I should have perhaps demonstrated on the last flight that we did is rudder characteristics. Now, when you're flying a swept-wing jet with underslung engines, there are two characteristics which are different to your regular, shall we say, aeroplane. So everything from your Cessna 172s all the way up to a Dash 8 or a C-130 Hercules, because it has a straight wing and the engines are pretty much in line with the wing, the thrust pitch is fairly benign, and also the rudder works like you'd expect it to. The primary effect of the rudder is yaw, and the secondary effect is roll. Now, on a swept-wing jet, everything gets a little weird. So obviously the thrust pitch is a lot more significant, and also, obviously assuming you've got underslung engines, if you've got rear-mounted engines or something like that, then the thrust pitch is maybe not quite as much, or maybe even reversed on some aircraft. Anyway, the swept wing is the thing that kind of makes things a little weird when it comes to the rudder. So instead of the primary effect of the rudder being yaw, the primary effect of the rudder kind of becomes roll. So you get really, really dramatic roll on rudder input. So much so that when you decrab on a crosswind landing, you kind of develop a bit of an automatic response in your hand. Automatically move the yoke as you shut the thrust levers and start to apply rudder input in order to prevent the airplane rolling quite significantly. So I'm going to demonstrate this, and we'll see what happens. So I'm just going to bash some rudder in. I'll go with the left. Right, so there is a yaw and a roll. So for a light aircraft, or a straight wing turboprop, or even a straight wing jet, that's the correct response. But for a swept wing aircraft, it should have been the other way around. So yaw, roll. Yeah, so it should have been a dramatic and instantaneous roll with some yaw mixed in, not the other way around for a swept wing jet. So I'm not going to say that Microsoft have completely failed in their implementation of this new physics engine, because I suspect that this aeroplane, this default aeroplane's flight model, has not been massively well tuned. It's just behaving like a straight wing aeroplane. And as soon as a developer like PMDG or iFly, I guess, the guys who did the Max in FS2020, come in with their more sort of in-depth processors, they'll be able to give us a really accurately handling 737. So I'm still hoping that we will get an aeroplane that handles that particular maneuver accurately. But for now, this default aeroplane does not handle quite as well as it should do. So we'll leave that aside, and we'll do some steep turns. So steep turns are a maneuver that normally we don't, well, we never fly in the real aeroplane. We'd only ever practice them in the simulator. So it's basically a 45-degree angle bank, so that little line there, maintaining altitude and as much as possible airspeed. So what I'd expect as we roll in, so we'll start with 30-degree angle bank, is a few clicks of up trim being required to compensate for the loss of lift. And yeah, straight away as I go over 30-degree angle bank, and we'd be getting a EGPWS bank angle call out at this point. Oh yeah, definitely having to add that angle of attack back, having to pull quite hard to do that. And speed we'd expect to start to bleed off a bit as well. Maybe add another 5 to 10% of N1. So definitely had to add that back pressure, and I've put a few clicks of trim in as well. The speed is starting to bleed a bit, so I'm going to add a little bit of thrust as well. And we'll see how we get on with that. Go for about 5% first. So yeah, this is pretty good actually. This is feeling quite nice. The numbers all work as I try to maintain bank angle. That's the key really to doing this maneuver, maintaining your bank angle, keeping the bank angle constant. So this is pretty good actually. This is feeling quite nice. Nice and stable. That 5%, maybe a bit less speed bleed than you'd expect in the real thing, but as you can see it's accelerating now with just an added few percent of thrust, about 5% or so. We'll start rolling out about 15 degrees to go, nice and gentle, not to cause anyone an injury. And as soon as we come out of the turn, yeah, pushing hard now to reset the attitude and then reset the power as well. That's what we had before. I think it was about 53 or something. Yeah, good. That's nice actually. It's handling very nicely. Perhaps not as much speed bleed as I might expect, but it's, you know, it's an aeroplane, a variant of the 7.3 that I've not flown before, so it might be that the max is just so slippy that it doesn't lose a huge amount of speed in a steep turn. So I'm willing to suspend any doubts that I've got just based on that. It's getting a little bumpy up here actually. It's you can see the aeroplane rocking around a bit. It's quite common as you approach Tenerife because the winds come off the Atlantic in front of us, come up the hills, and obviously the massive volcano there at Mount Teide, and you get these sort of bumpies on the lee side of Tenerife. So that's pretty cool. It's cool to see, or feel at least. Right, so that's your steep turns. Suppose I should try a stall of some sort, shouldn't I? So let's give it a go, shall we? So we'll just shut the thrust levers. Flight level 80 should have more than enough altitude to recover from this. Again, a maneuver that we would never, ever in a million years practice on the real aeroplane. Only really test pilots fly these sorts of maneuvers during initial certification. So I'm having to pull quite hard now because I've closed the thrust levers. It's going to take a long time for the plane to slow down, and I explained this in the last video that I did, but for anyone who didn't watch that, it's to do with, in the speed range, the NG and I'm guessing the Max 2 is very, very efficient, and it takes a long, long time for the aeroplane to slow down. Jet engines as well are kind of strange in that even at flight idle, they are still providing a modicum of thrust. They never, as long as they're running, they're always providing thrust to a degree. So unlike a propeller-driven aircraft, when you shut the throttles and the prop adds a huge amount of braking effort to the aeroplane, a jet engine won't do that. So that's another reason why jets are kind of slippery and hard to slow down compared to turboprop or a prop aircraft. So this is, yeah, pretty much what I would expect, to be honest. The speed is creeping back very, very slowly. Can you imagine? Oh, there's the stick shaker. So we're getting close, coming into the lower maneuver margin. You can see the yellow on the airspeed. So it's warning me that I am approaching a stall. That's the purpose of the stick shaker. It's not to tell me that I'm stalled. It's to warn me that I'm getting close. But because we're stupid, we're going to keep ignoring that and keep flying the airplane level and allowing it to slow down even more. And I'm adding more nose-up trim to make sure I can hold it in. And you can see the rate of descent now. So the airplane has now, yeah, properly stalled. You can see it just kind of bombing up and down. That's indicative of the real aircraft. It's got very, very stable stall characteristics. You can see we're descending about 1,000 feet a minute. So I'm just going to relax the back pressure, let the nose come down. I'm going to advance the thrust levers, but not too quickly because the thrust pitch can pitch the airplane back up into a secondary stall. I'm just going to sacrifice altitude to regain airspeed. And then we're going to firewall the throttles once we've got everything reset. And then I'm going to pull back to max continuous because we don't really need that much performance. Only lost about 1,000 feet. Having to really trim down quite heavily now. But the trim is so ridiculously quick on this thing that it's not that difficult. And reset. And yeah, a little bit early on the level off. Yeah, okay, that's pretty good. I'd say there's nothing really too untoward about that. So yeah, overall, it's pretty impressive for a default aircraft. But it is not, at the moment, worrying the PMDG. The PMDG is still by far the better aeroplane in terms of handling characteristics. And, I mean, it's not even worth talking about the systems. The systems are just a million times better. This thing is full of bugs and little things that it does that it shouldn't really do. So if you want the ultimate 737 experience, it is still the PMDG, in my opinion. I know that the X-Plane's got a few really good... well, it's got the Zebo mod, right, as the really good 7.3 for X-Plane. And I've heard that the praises sung of that thing. I've tried it a little bit, but not spent a significant amount of time with that. But if you fly the Zebo or the 7.3, PMDG 7.3, and you want ultimate realism, don't buy Microsoft Flight Simulator just yet. Because, oh, rather, don't buy Microsoft Flight Sim 24 just yet, because this ain't it. But it's very promising. It's certainly better than any default aeroplanes in the early stages of Microsoft Flight Sim 2020. And it's certainly a usable aeroplane. I mean, I don't know if I'd want to do a long flight on this thing, but in terms of hand flying a little bit on this short sector, it's not too bad at all. And speaking of which, I think we should probably start descending. So let's come down to 4,000 feet. Might pop the autopilot in just to help me make sure everything's set up in a second. But for now, we'll keep it as is. And the VNAV is actually working. That's cool. Even though I've not got VNAV selected. Obviously the flight directors are off, so still give me a little marker there. I don't know if that's actually accurate or not. So let's get the flight directors back, God help us, and just go heading and level change for now. And we'll go ADA command. Okay, now this vertical profile is telling us we're significantly high, so I'm not really sure which one to believe, to be perfectly honest. Right, you'll notice that I've got Navigraph charts in my little EFB here, which is very handy because I really don't like the Lidos, which are the free ones that come with the game. I'm a creature of habit. Right, so Tenerife North, ILS Zulu, runway 12, 1087 is in both sides. Final approach course 145, I've got set up there. What's our barrow minimums? For Cat Charlie, we've got 2391. So let's try and put this in here. Still getting used to this a little bit, but I'm getting there. Oh, good. Way too sensitive. That. Oh, this is going to be super annoying. 2391. Thank God it does it on the other side, so I don't have to do it twice. Okay, so frequency set, courses are set, minimums are in. It's going to be a flap 30, auto brake 3, let's call it. And it's a 3-degree glide with puppies on both sides, high intensity light system, and missed approaches in the box, or it should be anyway. So it's basically just straight ahead to 5,500 feet of vectors. So is that correct? 5,500 feet, max 185 knots on a rate with vectors. Has it got the speed in? It's got the speed in as well. So we can just fly it in LNAV, which is handy. We're back on profile now, so I'm going to go VNAV and see how we go with that. I'm also going to go LNAV to take us around the corner. I'm going to speed intervene. Yeah, speed intervene does work. I'm going to start slowing us down as well. Speed check, flaps 1. So the VNAV is interesting. It's making 0 attempt to stay on that profile, even though it's saying VNAV path. Fine, whatever. We're at 4,000 anyway. We're not CDA in it. We're just trying to. Wait, I just realised the auto throttle's not armed. That's probably one reason why it's not doing a great job. I forgive you, aeroplane. Right. Ah, this is working now. Look at that. MSP speed LNAV, LNAV alts, VNAV alt, sorry. So it's going to come around the corner. I'm going to let it fly on the autopilot for a little bit, but I'm going to take over and hand fly as soon as it's practical, because this isn't a test of systems, like I said, it's a test of the hand flying fidelity, or the flight model of the aircraft. The platform's full. We're down at the platform, so we just got to wait for the glide slope to come in, basically. Taking it very nice and easy. Descent checklist is landing altitude 2,100. So let's just double check I've got that right. Yeah. Let's have some speeds. For oh, okay. We've got no speeds. Cool. Gross weight. Let's say we're 55 tons. I know we're a little bit less than that, but it won't let us put that in. Epic. Standby caller. So it won't allow me to put and it's not auto-populated the max weight, and it won't allow me to put it in, which is epic. I'm just going to play it safe and go for 140, which is probably way above. It's not even going to allow me to do that, is it? This is real awesome. Key not active. All right, well, we're going to go for 140 as our final approach speed, which is probably going to be way too high. I suppose I could work it out based on what numbers it's saying here. I think it's VREF 40 minus 10 or something like that. It's massively overshot that, which is handy. Autopilot showing just why I didn't want to do any kind of autopilot test. Let's go flap 5 on the approach. Okay, Vorlock. Cool. So speeds for flap 30 we can't put in for some reason. Approach briefings we'll call complete. That's descent checklist. And approach checklist is nav aids are set and checked. And altimeters Q and H. Boop. Set cross checked. The auto throttle is a bit wild, I must say. So before it puts us into the sea, let's get rid of it, shall we? That's not the right noise, which is interesting. Right, a lot more comfortable hand flying the plane. We'll leave the autopilot in the bin for now. It's a little fast. Glide slope's coming, so let's go gear down, flat 15. Catch the glide slope, and down we go. And all I need to do really is put that little FPV on the 3 degrees, and we should be good. Quite a high thrust setting for flaps 15, I guess. I don't know. Flaps 30 speed check. Final approach speed we're going to use 140, which is going to be way too fast, but we'll play it on the safe side. Losing the glide a little bit, so let's increase that rate of descent. Steady green light, landing checklist. Okay. Let's get these on first, and on that. So gear down. Engine start switch is continuous. 3. That's a bit of a lift. Speed brakes armed. Flaps 30 plan 30 indicated green light. Cabin secure. Okay, we're good. We're good. We're back on the slope, sort of. You can see now the challenge of Tenerife North. The winds caused by the hills on both sides. Check, man, land. 2391 Barrow, misapproach altitude. Set. 3 white, scene correcting. Yeah, so hard work in the sim as in real life. I did a go around here not too long ago because we got really unstable at low altitude in very bad weather. continue / land. Yeah, really rough. Oh, now we're coming off the centre line. I'll do my best, but it's probably not going to be pretty.
50, 40, 30, 20, 10.
Way too fast. We're down. Speed brakes up. Reverse is normal. We'll go max reverse because we were a lot faster than we really should have been. Good though. Good. Good handling characteristics. I mean, the flying was ropey. Let's face it. It wasn't helped at all by the aeroplane throwing me a bunch of curveballs. Come off on this high speed here. 60 knots is checked. Idle reverse. But in terms of how it lands, yeah, it's quite good actually. Oh, come on. Cook the freaking brakes. Oh, this is... Come on. Surely it would definitely stop quicker than this. The brakes are really good. Right, okay. There we go. Yeah, the brakes are a bit ropey, maybe. But... yeah, okay. It's not awful. The touchdown was pretty good. The conditions at Tenerife North seem to be relatively accurately represented by the sim, and the airplane was riding it pretty well. I was just being distracted by absolutely everything going mental in the sim, which, you know, surely you can't blame me for that, can you? Long and short of it, is it as good as the PMDG? No, it's not, but it's good for a default aeroplane, for sure. And if you do want an idea of what it's like to hand fly a 737, this is not the worst. Did that disarm itself? Cool. This is definitely not the worst way to do it. If you want to do it for free, as I try to stay on the taxiway. Now, if you're a hardcore airliner guy and you love Boeings, I would say it's probably not a good time to get Microsoft Flight Sim 24, because I think all of the good airliners in the sim right now are Airbuses. I think the Boeings are all a bit ropey, and although this is one of the most beautiful and detailed external model of any airplane I've ever seen in a flight sim, like you can literally get up inside the landing gear wells and you can see all of the hydraulic reservoirs and all the hydraulics for moving the flaps, and just all the stuff that you've got in the real airplane. And in the nose gear, everything is there in the nose gear bay, the snubbers even to stop the wheels from spinning when the gear retracts. Ridiculous level of detail on the exterior model. However, the systems in this thing are nowhere near what they need to be to provide you with a realistic flight. So have some fun hand flying it, sure. But systems wise, yeah, it ain't it. And that's before we even go into all the insane issues with the servers when the game first came out. It seems to have stabilized. So my internet connection is pretty good, disclaimer, but it seems to be running pretty nicely now. So I'm willing to give the servers a bit more of a benefit of the doubt, but certainly this aeroplane is not your full 737 experience. So that's my conclusion. As always, thank you for watching if you've made it all the way through. And if you enjoy these kind of videos, please be sure to leave a like and comment and all the other YouTube stuff so I know that you guys want more of these. I was very surprised how popular the last 737 video was, because usually when I try to do airliner stuff, nobody cares. So if you want to see more airliner stuff, let me know. And if you want to see more light aircraft stuff, let me know. I will definitely be doing more light aircraft stuff in Microsoft Flight Sim, because again, I think where you're really going to see the new physics model working at its hardest is going to be with the light aircraft. I think the light aircraft are going to be spot on pretty much. I've flown a few of them, and they are a significant improvement over Microsoft Flight Simulator. They kind of have the same sort of feel as the really good payware aeroplanes did in Flight Sim 2020. So, yeah, looking forward to... I'm just going to run over this forklift truck. Definitely not OSHA certified. Excited to show you some of the light aircraft stuff. But if you want more airliner stuff in either of the Sims 2020, because I've still got it installed, or this one, let me know. And I'll see what I can cook up for you. But yeah, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and do all of that stuff. And hopefully I will see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.